Hello and welcome to 81 All Out. This is Max and I have Sid with me. Sid, say hello.
Hi, Max.
And we have two very special guests on the pod today. First is a very popular podcaster, Subash Jayaraman, who also tweets at the Cricket Couch.
What's up,
Yes, Subhash.
guys?
And we also have KD coming back to the pod. He was on a few episodes earlier. So, KD, welcome to the pod as well.
No, hi, pleasure.
So the IPL is kicked off. It's been 2 weeks now, and we wanted to talk about batting, scores, T20 in general, and we thought this will be a really nice bunch of characters to talk about it. So let's start with the reason what ticked off into getting this pod. It started off with a Twitter thread after the absolute carnage in the RCB and KKR game, and so there was going into multiple threads and a lot of mentions and replies. So we just thought we should get all our thoughts in one place and have a discussion over this and see how it goes. So having said that, let me start with what took off that discussion, the Russell innings. Now, there were a lot of words that were used even by people in the commentary box and by ex-cricketers and even currently playing T20 players. But among those, one of the words that was murderously used was astonishing. So, Sid, what do you think about that?
Yeah, it's. I think a lot of times when we watch T20 innings, it particularly happens with batting, and I noticed that the instinctive tendency of commentators and even people watching, and sometimes even people like me, sometimes even me, is to assume that something that is going on is astonishing. Especially in that game, KKR needed 53 of the last 3 overs. Russell made 48 of 13, and the first 4 balls, I think he had scored 1 run. So effectively, he made like 47 of 9 balls. And when you see the six hitting and things, it's almost like it is very easy to ignore a lot of other factors and to primarily focus on the hitting and to the way the ball was traveling, the arcs in which it was going, the way he was, even the angles in which the bat was making. I think all that plays a big part in getting into your head that this is something astonishing. But then, of course, as you sit back and then as you discuss it with others, then you put things in context, and then you look at the history of the ground and the history of the team that they're playing against, which is RCB, and then you look at Andre Russell's own history, then you sort of begin to build a large, more comprehensive picture of it, and maybe sit back and say, perhaps this is not something that one should have said is unexpected. I mean, astonishing. You say something is astonishing when it is completely. I mean, there is a certain value attached to that word, right? So the moment you say astonishing, you have a certain image of it, but when you sit back, I think things tend to temper a bit more, and then you begin to realize that there were other words that maybe fitted better. And Kartikeya and Subash would probably. It'll be a good time to bring them in now. Kartikeya, what did you make of that innings and the reaction to it?
Well, so let me take the reaction first, right? So there are two types of reactions. Like one is like an emotional reaction, and the other is an sort of a description. Other is a description, description of the context and the description of the game, and those are different things, right? What has happened, I think, is that in the reaction there are sort of two things which come into play. One is that the emotion has been commodified in sort of, especially in the internet age, where traffic governs like success, right? If you're successful, if your story gets a lot of hits and is read or seen by a lot of people, right? And that's one thing. And the other is that the fact that they won meant that it had to be explained. Like, it had to be explained that Russell did something amazing and RCB did something bad, and so therefore they won. even if both of those things were not actually true, it is sort of assumed that both of those things are true, and then they sort of, they sort of build backwards from that conclusion, and then whatever reason they have to give, they'll give. You know, whereas, as you said, I thought, the sort of the contest is so attenuated. There's no choice, right? When you need 50 from 3 overs, you have to swing for the fences for everything. And Russell is really good at that. I mean, Russell is really good at swinging for the fences generally. I don't think anybody has 4,000 plus runs in T20 at his strike rate, which is somewhere roughly around 170.
I think the understanding of the expectations on Russell and the fact that you say he's meeting those expectations, both are false premise right here. Because the situation is such that, the game is such, the situation is such, and Andre Russell's quote unquote skills are such that, either when he comes off, it's going to look phenomenal. And here he has strung 2 or 3 innings back to back that where things may have come off. So we say there is an expectation on Andre Russell to deliver this sort of innings every single time. That's not possible. It is not possible by the very nature of the game itself. Look at this innings. Let's talking about smaller sample size. Take this game against RCB. As you said earlier, he was 1 of 4 balls, and of those 4 balls, he tried to hit all 4 of them. One went straight to the fielder, Moeen Ali, in cover. Another one, it was a lame effort. And the 2, the ball was too quick for him, but he kept trying to hit them, all 4 of them, because the situation that he was in is incumbent that whoever it was, whether it was Russell or somebody else, that's all you have to do. Somebody by the name of Ronak, I don't think it's Ronak Kapoor of Cricinfo, but had a ball-by-ball comment saying, what is Kartik doing here? They should be teeing off from both sides. As you would expect, when you want 14 plus runs in an over and you have four and change left, you would expect trying to hit every single ball, and you hope you connect few, and that way you make 14 runs and over. That's the only way to get there. So it's not surprising that you would attempt it. And if you look at the definition of the word astonishing, it is,
That's be surprising,
Dictionary defines it as extremely surprising. There was nothing surprising about what was attempted. Now you can say it was extremely surprising that it came off. That might be very well true, because he tried 4 balls to swing for the fences, didn't connect any of them. 5th ball was a full toss at his waist high. More power to Russell that he was able to, a beamer he could deposit in a small ground in Bangalore. Good for him, right? And then once that bowler with good pace, who bowled back of length delivery and tried something, and then bowled a beamer, was taken off the attack. Then you have Stoinis coming in, bowling length deliveries. Anybody could hit it. It's not like Andre Russell has invented a new thing. I'm sure you guys remember from a few years back when I think it was CSK versus Kings 11 IPL final.
I was just going to say that.
And Suresh Raina went, because that was the situation. He had to go from ball 1, and they had 100 by the 6th over in the chase, right?
Yeah, I think he made 97 in 25.
Something like that. So it's not these things. The game is such. The requirements are such that you have to go for it and see that if it's your day, if you're a lucky day, it's going to come off. It's possible. It's Kartik got caught. He hit for a 4 and a 6, and then trying the same shot, he got caught at the boundary. So it didn't come off. Maybe Kartik would have been the person. Would you have used the same word, astonishing? Kartik scored 23 runs, 25 runs against Bangladesh, last over of an ODI or T20. I don't even remember anymore.
T20, yeah.
These things happen. You can say right now Russell has been in a very lucky streak. Maybe, as Kartikeya suggested, you should go buy a lottery ticket, because if he can pull this off 3 matches in a row or 2 matches in a row with everything he tried, everything lines up, he gets a shitty bowler that's bowling length delivery at 130 kilometers an hour, and then Saudi does the same thing. Maybe it's time for him to buy a lottery ticket and become truly a millionaire.
So wait,
I think one thing I would say is that if you notice, that I did, because we were coming on this podcast, I looked at a few match reports of the yesterday's game, which I normally don't really pay much attention. But there was I have yet to see even one sentence, let alone one paragraph, which tries to describe Russell's actions. Like, this is, you start off saying, wow, Russell, but really what you're looking at is that score, 48 in 13 balls. You're not really, what did he really do? What option did he have? What were the choices before him? What are his strengths? What are his weaknesses? What did he do? I think that six of that Beamer was something like, not many people can do that. I mean, you have to be really, really strong to do that. And you have to meet the ball like perfectly, because otherwise the bat will turn in your hand. It didn't, like, which is quite some skill, But is it like for one of the top hitters in T20 in the last 10 years is not a surprise, right? I mean, every time Tendulkar hit a ball on the rise, like, people didn't talk about it for like 15 days, right?
So I'm trying to understand this whole intent here. So both you guys have spoken about the fact that he had no choice but to go for it, and as did Karthik. So of course, I might be mixing formats here, but just to get this intent point out, I mean, there was a test match in 1990 when India needed 24 to avoid the follower, and Kapil Dev hit 4 sixes in a row. Now, in that particular case, he had a number of choices. He didn't have to. I mean, he was batting with a number 11, but still, he didn't have to hit 4 sixes to avoid the follow-on.
Yeah.
He could have, done a number of other things. So, are you saying that? I'm just trying to understand this whole. He didn't have a choice. Let me even put it a little more. Let me even give you another example of Virendra Sehwag scoring 100 before lunch, or nearly scoring 100 before lunch. I mean, of course, he had so many other choices, but he went for scoring 100 before lunch. Mm-hmm. Or Tendulkar scoring 82 or 49 when India were chasing 130 something. He didn't have to, but he did.
Yeah.
So is that the kind of thing, difference you're trying to bring out here in terms of the choice that he had?
Yes, partly. But I'll give you an example, right? In 2015, before the 2015, in the 2015 World Cup, before they changed the rules for power plays, right? This was a problem with the power play in one-day cricket, in 50-over cricket. That basically, with only 4 fielders are allowed outside the circle, it was impossible for the fielding side to set a field which would not telegraph what length the bowler was going to bowl, right? And this was Anil Kumble's argument for changing that rule, right? So basically, when the contest between bat and ball is obvious for whatever reason, because of some, excessive restriction in the rules, or because of some excessive restriction from the scorecard, then the game is basically set, right? It's the same on the 5th day of a test match, right? Where one side is like chasing 600, basically has to survive 90 overs. And the bowling side is basically, with 7 fielders around the bat. The sort of the shape of the contest becomes really crystal clear. And in T20, basically, that's always the case, almost. Because once batting has so much resources compared to bowling, and 10 wickets over 120 balls, that's always the case.
The fact that T20, especially franchise T20, the way it is played, say in the IPL or any other league for that matter, it's a very short-term league. And, obviously it's a privately funded tournaments, and they need to maximize their publicity and popularity so that they can attract sponsorship. So they have to talk up everything they do. Right. And also, so these are,
right.
What is a franchise play? If you play an entire season, you play 14 games against 7 other teams in IPL. And it might be different in, say, PSL or BBL or whatever. But it's a very short-term thing. So you can't really have the time that a baseball season has, which is 162 games, where you can go through these slumps, ups and downs, and develop trends of, performances. And then you can actually say, this is quality. This is the strategy behind this game. Whereas here, considering you're borrowing everything whole and soul from quote unquote cricket, which is Test cricket, which ODI borrowed from, and from there T20. You're trying Test cricket by itself. It's a 5-day game, lasts a long time. Even if you take just one Test match, 3 sessions a day, 15 sessions. There is so much changing within the game itself. Plus, you take a Test series. Plus, you have the history of Test cricket to juxtapose all these things and compare and contrast and say this is actually good. This is what the contest is. Here, the contest is the bowlers are trying to take wickets, batsmen are trying to prevent them from taking wickets, and the offense is an actual extension of the defense. Whereas T20, all that is out the door. So it's a totally different sport. And till we actually treat T20 is a great sport, but we haven't defined it through the lens of T20. You're still trying to define it through the lens of Test cricket, which is why when Virat Kohli hits a cover drive of the second ball of the innings, everybody and their aunt, jizzes the pants. But Virat Kohli is a horrible T20 batter. He's terrible. He doesn't fit into the scheme of things. But because you cannot say that about Virat Kohli, apparently, nobody says it. Everybody says, "Oh yeah, that is awesome. That is awesome." Like, no, it's not.
Yeah, I was just thinking
what you need is Russell. You need a Gale. You need Surya Kumar Yadav. You need Krunal Pandya. You want those guys that can come in and start hitting from ball one. That's what that sport is. That's what the sport should be headed towards. Where hitters come in trying to score the maximum number of runs every single delivery they face.
I think the whole Russell thing gets a lot of paparazzi and all that is not just because of the hitting ability. I mean, he's now you have a lot of kids who are coming up like this, beefy, broad shoulders, can swing through the line and so on. Yes. And you'll always have people coming like that, not only from the West Indies, but also from, let's say, New Zealand or Australia or even South Africa. But what it actually it's hiding is that this is the fourth inning that Russell has done in a row, which is commendable at best. Because right from the Sunrisers game, I think it was 19 balls, 48. And then the next game, it was 17 balls, 49. After that, I think it was 20-something balls, 60 he made. And then now this. So he's done this 4 times in a row, which is commendable. But what it's hiding is that the effort of the rest of the team has been horrendous to lead up to a situation like that. Right? So the Sunrisers game also, he, like you said, he didn't have a choice, because if he had to win the game for them, that's the only way he could go about it. Mm-hmm. It's because all the people before that had batted at around 120, 130. Even the game with RCB, you had Karthik and Rana. They were around 135 or something when you're chasing 200. So your team until then has brought the game to a situation like that. And so if you look at the Sarfaraz and Rahul thing, that when Rahul got out, the equation was the same. It was 46 required in 3 overs, right? And if you think about it, Miller would have come in because Rahul got out. Miller would have come in, and you're expecting that same thing to happen, which didn't, and petered out and all that. But going before that, they were batting so horribly because I think the CSK was able to bowl 4 overs for 18 runs or 19 runs. So. But had Miller today teed off and scored those 46 runs in those 3 overs that were there, then we'll be talking again about Miller, right? So it's not and every team has one or two gun players like this. You have Hardik Pandya, you have Russell, you have the ageless Dhoni, supposed to be Miller. You have these players everywhere. But what's horrible is that the players before them are suffocating the innings, and rightly, like Sid said, they're playing it in a different way, thinking they're playing a different format, and which then is leading to a situation where it's going to be a boom or bust. With Russell, it's been 4 booms and no bust, but the bust is coming. It's going to be hopefully the CSK game in 3 days, or the game after that. But it's not a model that is worth going for every time. So unless you change your game, you're not going to be able to go this way.
I mean, you have 10 wickets. You have 120 deliveries. So you can afford to lose 1 every 12 balls, right? And, let's say you take 2 deliveries to get your eye in, so to speak. and then you have 9 deliveries that you can swing for the fences, and you get out on the 12th one, you're good. That's par for the course, literally. And T20, the so-called strategies, and T20 description and how we view T20, we are all held hostage to how we have learned cricket, how we have seen cricket, which is Test cricket mostly, and then to an extent ODIs. Instead, if you accept that this is the demands of this sport are entirely different and should be approached a different way. Sure, you still have the same players that grew up on, learning to play the longer format and then adjusting their game to play T20. Fine, but you have to make a very honest admission that these two are very different sports. There is a value for the TV broadcasters, commentators, for them to say that no, this is also cricket. So that way, the people that are watching Test cricket or ODI cricket will also watch this, rather than develop a whole new fan base for a different sport.
Compared to the cricket which most people have been sort of have had have been able to watch like for most of their life, right? The quality in the IPL is really bad most of the time. I mean, if Andre Russell is your sort of superstar player, then how good can it be as cricket? It's not really as T20. Yeah, that's a different story. But that's a story which nobody wants to tell, right? So that story is absent completely. But then it becomes even more unsatisfactory, because not only are these people misreading it because they insist on seeing it as though it's cricket, they are then sort of being flatly disingenuous and saying that something which is really, really crap as cricket is actually quite good. And it's not. Marcus Stoinis is a really, really bad bowler. He's not by the standards of like of someone who would be a serious bowler in an international side. He's not really that good, And even in this, Imran Tahir and Harbhajan Singh, as old as they are and as out of touch with sort of the top level right now that they are, they shouldn't be going for 20 runs in 4 overs. Yeah, no, against like reasonable batsmen, they shouldn't, unless it's like a really bad pitch.
Let me ask you this, though. Suppose it was a similar situation, same situation in terms of the runs and balls in that RCB KKR game, 53 of 3 overs. And had there been, say, the 3 overs being bowled by Jasprit Bumrah, and pick your 2 other really, really good T20 bowlers. And if Russell had still had pulled it off, would you then...
Doesn't matter. It does not matter.
Are they really
the bowler is?
Yeah.
What
who the bowler is?
It doesn't matter who the bowler is, because because Russell is not deciding his approach based on the bowler. No, he's deciding his approach based on the scorecard. He has no choice.
But then where is the credit for the hand-eye coordination and the ability to strike, that many number of sixes consecutively?
Oh, no, I believe both of us, me and Kartikeya, gave Russell the credit.
He's an outstanding six-hitter. He's an outstanding power hitter.
Sorry, Kartikeya, but it's a full toss above the waist to put it for 6. Even though it was only a 65-meter 6, it's a very difficult thing to do, and I give major props to Russell. Yeah. But I don't think we are discussing Russell's exploits here through the lens of T20. We're trying to justify what he did through the lens of cricket, and I think that is disingenuous.
But I am glad you bring up like Bumrah or one of these other players, right? Because even if you look at Bumrah or Kagiso Rabada or one of these other bowlers, right? I find it amazing that, the same bowler over the course of a tournament will go for 40 in some games and 20 or 25 in other games. That is a huge range for a bowler to be conceding. So a lot of the outcomes in each individual game are subject to things beyond the bowler's control and things beyond the opposition's control. They are sort of circumstantial fortune, and really, I keep bringing up baseball, but baseball is the nearest game to T20. I mean, you will have Mike Trout. There will be games where he'll like swing and miss and whatnot, but then there will be other games where he'll like go 4 for 6 or something like that. You know, and he's a great player. I mean, he's probably the best player going right now, right, Subash?
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah. So, but when he has those games, no, where he's sort of in a slump or when he just can't buy a hit, they understand that it's luck. Like they understand that in baseball, the best team will lose 30% of its games, and the worst team will win 30% of its games. No matter what.
I mean, let me draw an analogy, right? I mean, that's like when Brian Lara scores 375 or 400. It's the same thing, right? I mean, you know that it's not like that's not his standard score. You know that if, at some point of time he's going to get sub 20 score or a sub 10 score, but then it still doesn't mean that Brian Lara's 400 is not something amazing.
It's a unique achievement. But the thing is, if he scores 400 and his career average is, say, 22, like Mohammad Ashraful, right? Mohammad Ashraful has had some phenomenal innings, but nobody would ever think of Mohammad Ashraful as a major batsman. Maybe some guy with a tiger costume somewhere might. But other than that, nobody would even venture that guess.
Thank you so much for ensuring nobody in Bangladesh listens to this podcast.
But see, there are basically there are sort of two ways in which you can sort of account for skill, right? You can establish. You either look at a large number of games and look at the distribution of performances over those large number of games, and that's where you can tell the difference between a guy who averages 55 over 100 test matches and a guy who averages 35 over 100 test matches. Right? That's a significant difference. Or you have to be like an expert. Like you have to be able to watch. You have to be like one of those people. Like you watch a guy from the slips for like half an hour, and you can tell whether he's this good or he's sort of average. That and the number of people who can do the latter are usually they live in either in an international team or in high up in some first class team or something like that. They don't live in the press box.
So I made two observations hearing both KD and Subash talk. One of them is that it's, I think, how we are taught to play the game. And it goes back to what Subash said earlier, is you have to treat them as two separate games and not as extension of the game, right? When we first pick up the bat and we're, at some level of instruction that we're getting, which is, we're always told to put a price on your wicket, right? We're always told put a price on your wicket, put your foot forward, head down, that's how you're taught. And which is correct for a particular way of playing cricket. But when you try to bring that same logic here, and I'm going back to what I had said earlier about, players like Uttapa or Dinesh Karthik or Rana or, Rahul and all these guys who have been doing it, they've all been playing that way. So technically, if you look at it, they've been scoring at more than run a ball. They've been putting a price on the wicket and only taking that calculated risk when required. So if they see a bad ball, they're hitting it out. But otherwise, they're just motoring it away, finding a 2 here. So they're doing well. They're playing around 130, 125, 140 at most strike rate because they're playing in that zone. And every team only has one or two guys who are playing in a different way. They're playing this fearless brand of cricket, saying, no, there is no price on my wicket. If I score, I score. If I'm out, and that's it. That's the end, which is the other one that Subash opened with, saying that you have 12 balls to play. What do you do happens in those 12 balls? You swing for the fences or you go back to the pavilion, right? So in a team, you have 9 people who have been playing in one way and 2 people who are playing another way. And the team that has more people who are playing the second brand of cricket more or less ends up in the playoffs in a tournament like the IPL, right? So that's one observation. The other observation I made when you guys were talking about baseball is, because the IPL or any of these franchise tournaments are 45 to 60-day tournaments, right? So all of them have at most 12 to 16 games. I think even the Big Bash has, it's probably the little longer one, but still, it's not more than that.
Yeah.
And therefore,
And by the way,
whatever.
it's not longer by design of the tournament. It's longer because they want to capture the Christmas season, holiday season. So that's why it's longer there.
Yeah, but again, in terms of games, I don't think it's longer. Was trying to say, right? So that you're playing within 12 to 16 games in every franchise tournament that you have, right? So the number of games that you play in within the confines of a tournament is not too much. So
Correct.
whatever records or performance you make for that tournament speak a lot. Now, probably one of the ways, and maybe we should think about how we are evaluating T20 players, is that if you put them out as a calendar, right, it starts from the CPL, then the Bangladesh, you have PSL, Big Bash, IPL, the Manzai, the Manzai League. So now if you put them in
there's
that
one in
order,
South Africa also, no?
yeah, that was the Manzai.
And then there's the England Blast.
Yeah.
So if you put them in that order,
guys also play in the county NatWest.
So that's the T20 Blast.
Yeah.
yeah. So then if you see, like a lot of these players are playing in not all these places, not the Indian ones at least, but all the ones that get spoken up a lot, have been playing. So then if you then take Russell, for example, because he's been playing at least 4 of these 5 leagues he's played in, then if you count his T20 performance in a calendar year, maybe that is a much bigger range of games, and the distribution across that is probably something that is worth looking at.
Absolutely. I mean, I wouldn't say, for the lack of anything else, yes, of course. More data points to understand what the trend is, what is normal. Because we say, because there was a point at which if you had a strike rate, Tendulkar's career strike rate is what, 89, something like that, which is unbelievable. I mean, obviously Richards before him was unbelievable too, because it was so much higher than what was average strike rate of that time.
Yeah.
Now, if you have a strike rate of 89, people will laugh at you if you don't go run the ball.
Average now,
right? Because teams are easily scoring more than run a ball as a collective unit, meaning runs per ball has gone over 1 run per ball in ODIs. In T20s, you're seeing 180 is like, when it started, it was like 160 was the par. Now it's 180 is par. If it's played in Bangalore, it's like 200 to 210 because of the geometry of the area, so on and so forth. So it still hasn't pushed 2 runs a ball. No teams don't average on average score 240 runs in every completed 20-over inning, right? So the
I tell you what, in one-day cricket, in one-day cricket, there are 10 wickets over 300 balls, right? Now, so that's 30 runs per wicket, right? 30 balls per wicket. Now, there are batsmen in one-day cricket who bat in like 6, 7, 8, 9, that kind of position in the batting order, who will score at like 110, 120, and will be dismissed once every 25, 28 balls. Right? So they're actually, if the team was made up of only players like them, that team would be bowled out more often than not, right? So if you think about the equivalent player in T20, this would be a player who will score, I don't know, at 220 or 220 or 230 and be dismissed about once in 9 or 10 balls, right? That player doesn't exist yet in T20.
Yeah.
Even Russell is dismissed once every 15 balls.
Yeah.
Right. There's nobody in T20 who's considered a plausible player who's anywhere close to that 12 mark. Right. So everybody right now is, and that's why, like, in the average one-day game, the big advancement in one-day cricket has been that where teams were losing 6 or 7 wickets on average in the 80s, now they're losing 8 or 9 wickets. So they're using their resources much more efficiently now than they were then. Whereas in T20 right now, teams are losing like 6.5, somewhere between 6 and 7 wickets per innings on average, right? This could easily go up to 8 or 9, the average, right? So the distribution will shift where an average goes from 6 to 7 to 8 to 9, right? Yeah. And that will be a T20 game, or that will be a T20 contest where, 200 is reached more frequently, I would wager. But
Yeah.
it will also be a T20 contest where you have more 100 all outs, which would be fine, right? Because again, if you draw the analogy to baseball, right, there are games which are 1-0s, right? Very wonderful, exciting games. And then there are games which are like, 10-1.
Yeah.
And then there are games which are 10-9,
Yeah.
and all of them occur like from time to time,
So, in terms of a metric, do you think that once a batsman comes in, it'll be useful to know what his strike rate is every 12 balls, or what his output is every 12 balls? So that way, would that then put things in a little more perspective?
Yeah, but for that you have to first know what the players are trying to do, right? If you look at like what they were doing today, right? What in this? I looked at the scorecard. Let's say, so what's his name? Sarfaraz Khan and KL Rahul.
KL Rahul, yeah.
Right? They're chasing 161 in 20 overs, right? And both of them have run a ball 50s, right? That's basically like they're using up 100 out of the 120 balls available, right? And they've scored like about 110 runs. So that's like they're leaving themselves 50 to get in the last 20 odd balls. That's not on. That's just really bad.
And that's exactly what I said earlier. So that's what happened in the KKR game as well. That's how those guys were playing, and the Russell had to do that. So if Miller did that today, we would be talking about the same thing.
One of the things I would really like to know, if from someone who gets a chance to interview these T20 players, is like how many T20 players actually think in terms of T20. Like I know that the West Indians do, because I've talked to people and with all these West Indians and all these players in general who are basically itinerant professionals who play in every franchise league all throughout the year. They are much more advanced in their thinking than sort of the big internationals who are like the big ticket players in Australia or India or England, or who still sort of think in cricket terms.
But what about the teams themselves? Haven't they understood this, that to build a team, and during these auctions and things like that, haven't they understood that the West Indian model is the way to go? Why aren't they building these teams with 8-9 hitters in them and people who can just who don't care about price on their wicket or anything?
Because people that are running these teams, I mean, this comes under the umbrella of BCCI, which also runs Test cricket for India. So
But it's the same in BBL and all, no?
Everything else, man, it's the same thing. So which is why these two should be like completely split up, different sport, run by different entities entirely. Screw that, like you have different source or pipeline of players and stuff. Everybody has their own. Because that will also allow Test cricket to be marketed much better. Because now we are having fucking
subsidy.
Can you swear on this podcast or not?
Yeah. You can.
Go ahead, man.
I'll fucking go ahead then. Because you have the same freaking boards running Test cricket, whereas T20 and T20, and they think T20 is popular and gets the money. I'm like, you have no idea how popular Test cricket can be.
Yeah.
So they're like just treating Test cricket as a charity case, whereas Test cricket on its own is a phenomenal sport, obviously.
So you're trying to say that if you have a totally different management and ownership, you're trying to say that there may be teams who realize that Virat Kohli is not a good pick.
Yeah, and Virat Kohli would be...
They won't also like...
hold on, Kartikeya, hold on. And Virat Kohli will be paid shit ton of money to play Test cricket. And he'll be fucking very good at it. And you should play shit ton of money to Andre Russell to play T20. And Krunal Pandya to play T20 rather than like, you also have to play first class cricket for Baroda and then also turn up for your Syed Mushtaq Ali tournament and play T20 IPL. All this stuff. Like, no, man, have two different sports. Play separate.
And the worst argument people make is like, in Twitter, this is like a favorite word. Hey, players have to adapt these days, is what they say. It's not magic, man. It's really hard to do.
And also, here's the thing.
I can think of only one player who's actually adapted. It's like all the years of T20 now. How many years have there been? More than 15 years, right? There's been exactly one player who's adapted to all three formats. AB de Villiers. Nobody else.
to go back to Kartikeya's point, people are like, oh, players need to adapt. Also, like I would love watching AB de Villiers play Test cricket as well as T20. I don't want to deprive myself of that or deprive the player of the opportunity. I'm like, what do you mean deprive the player of the opportunity? I don't get it. You're telling me there are very, 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 very few players that can do what AB de Villiers has done. It's obvious, right? There are not many that can do excel in Test cricket and also excel in T20. It's not possible. When you say excel, no, I'm not saying 130 strike rate and 30 average. I'm like 250 strike rate at 30 average. That's what I mean by excelling in T20. Like that's not going to happen. It's very two different formats. It's very hard to do. So have the guy that is really, really good. So that way you'll get your best T20 players, you'll get your best test players, and then they play different sports. And you can enjoy them both as a viewer, and you let the players get suitably compensated for their skills and efforts in individual formats rather than crossing over from one to another.
Yeah, so talking about, Max's point about evaluating players on the whole year's performance, like evaluating a Russell based on his whole year's, calendar year's T20 performance. One of the things that I always assumed, perhaps wrongly, as you guys have told me, is that in the IPL and maybe in the BBL, he is likely to face better bowlers than he would in, say, some other leagues. I mean, I always thought that the IPL, like a batsman doing well in the IPL was, he always had at least two good bowlers that he was facing. But now it seems that, as Kartikeya brings it up, it's very difficult to gauge a bowler's value in T20, right? And how good he is. Mm-hmm. And which is why I want to also bring up that the only time in which I felt really, it felt really exciting to watch a bowler in this IPL was in that one super over that Rabada bowled. And then it struck me that in a super over, the batting team has only three batsmen. Their resources are limited to three. So automatically then, the moment Russell got out,
it's one wicket.
Karthik and Uthappa, they couldn't afford to get out because if they did, the match is over.
Yeah.
So then the stakes are then immediately shifted. That Rabada then has such a massive advantage coming in because he knows that. So is that like a fair enough argument to one of the reasons to say that why, because of the resources are so much for the batsman that you can't really evaluate bowling?
Of course.
Yeah, because the batsman. So the thing is, who cares who's bowling? Who cares whether it's Bumrah or somebody else? The batsman cannot afford to care about being dismissed. I mean, and of course, batsmen don't care about looking ugly or anything like that.
No. But what about the situations where I don't know if it happens? I mean, commentators talk about it. But what about situations where teams say that okay, let us play him out and then go after the other bowlers? Does that even happen, or should that happen?
I mean, that makes no sense. If you have only 120 deliveries and you have 10 wickets in hand, and you say like, oh, let's play Rashid Khan out, I'm like, you're a freaking idiot.
Yeah, I mean, you're giving up a huge amount of. If you say, let's say you play out 1 over, right, out of 20, because you don't want to give the bowler a wicket. You just conceded like 5% of the game to the opposition, uncontested.
When you look at it mathematically, yes. But if you think about it, what happened, the Rajasthan game, where Dhoni actually, they played the guy before out because he was just waiting for Unadkat, because he knew you have to bowl Unadkat. I'm way more confident of hitting Unadkat. I know where he's going to bowl. He's going to bowl in my arc. I would rather back myself to hit Unadkat than try to hit, I forgot who the bowler was, Archer. I would rather back myself to hit Unadkat than hit Archer, because out of the 6 balls that I have to hit Archer, I probably will connect 2 and I will get out. With Unadkat, I have a much bigger confidence going in, and that's what happened, right?
That's good for Dhoni, but it's not necessarily good for the team, no?
Hold on, I don't know whether it's good for anybody for that matter, Dhoni or the team.
He gets a bigger score, no? I mean,
no. My thing is this, right? That sort of thing is only plausible even if you already have a target, right? You say like, oh, I need to get 60. Well, I'm trying to get.
Yeah, you see these things happening only in the chase. You see these happening in the chase only.
Chase, right? So one interesting would be to find out what Andre Russell's strike rate is and how many balls does he get. Loses his wicket when KKR bat first. No, I don't have the number in front of me, but that would be interesting to see. I'm willing to bet Russell bats the same way as a T20 hitter should. Whether you are chasing or setting a target, you play the same way. That is the sport I want to watch. The conceding of 1 over to Jafra Archer. Let's say there was 8 overs left, right? And Dhoni's team has to get, say, 110 runs in 8 overs. Now, if it is 4 overs of Jafra Archer left, is Dhoni going to not let 4 of these overs go? Well, he can't. Because the scoreboard dictates he can't play out Jafra and try to get 400 or, let's say he gets 20 runs of Archer's 4 overs. To get 90 or 4 overs of whoever, even if it is Unadkat, trying to hit Unadkat for 90 runs of 4 overs of Unadkat is very hard to do.
So a team like SRH, which has built itself on, supposedly a strong bowling attack and, defending low scores and all that, are you saying that suppose there is an opposition team that builds itself like the West Indies, say, with Darren Sammy at number 9, with hitters, that they play whenever they play SRH, they'll just go after them. They may come off some days they may get all out for it, but they will have a good chance of beating them.
Yes. Because and they'll win more than they'll lose in the long run against such opposition.
They'll win more often than they lose
in the long run.
Yeah, that's very interesting because then it automatically brings to question, what is what in terms of the auction. All these teams paying like gazillion rupees and dollars for these mystery spinners and these bowlers. I mean, is it like just foolhardy what they do?
No, it's not foolhardy. It's not foolhardy. It makes total sense right now because let's face it, there aren't there isn't like a pool of hitters to pick from. Like there is a pool of middle order batsmen for India to choose from when India select their test team, right? Every first class team has like 2 or 3, middle order batsmen who are settled and who average 30 or 40 or 50. And, so someone is like the 30-year-old, like senior pro, and someone is like the 19-year-old young upcoming player. So there's a pool to pick from, right? So, but if you look at like T20 hitters, like, where in the lower levels is the game where the power hitter will develop? I don't know that such a thing exists. There isn't like the number of players available of that type is really small. That's one of the reasons why someone like a Russell stands out, or someone like a Brathwaite, or someone like I don't know who else stands out like a mile because they are rare. But they're not always going to be rare if T20 keeps growing. And then bowlers will basically, I don't think there's much point to them, but right now what you see is like a very suboptimal game.
See, I'm guessing this is coming from like, what is a good bowler? What is a good ball in T20? How do we characterize it? And I'm not an expert, so I'm gonna let Ravi Ashwin answer this. I think if you go to the last published Couch Talk podcast, which was with Ashwin, he's like, there's nothing like a good ball. You could have a short, wide delivery that doesn't go for it. That's a good ball. That's it.
I remember
understand.
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. Ashwin understands that if T20 gets to where it ought to get to, bowling has no place in it, really. The way we talk about bowlers and how important they are to a cricket team, in a T20 team, bowlers are not that important. You just need somebody to roll over. As long as you have enough players that can outmuscle the opposition, that's all that matters.
Yeah, but why would you not just put a bowling machine, just have at it?
Yeah, you could.
It would be like a F1 style game.
No? I have no vested interest in to say that bowlers have to be part of the game, or this is how I don't look T20 through a cricket lens. I have nothing in it, so I'm willing to say you could have a bowling machine, and it's basically like a home run derby, right? You could have it. I mean, that's a sport I'll watch.
In fact,
I
talking
mean,
about
make it boring
bowling
to you,
machines,
that's fine. But T20 is boring right now. Really.
talking about bowling machines, I remember Jared Kimber and a few others suggesting quite a while back that it's amazing that teams haven't yet got in this hitting batsmen getting into this hitting
Cage.
cages. Yeah, hitting cages before going in. So then that first two balls of having to get your eye in, then you automatically already have your eye in. So you just go in and swing.
Start swinging. Absolutely. That would be, as Kartikeya said, T20 is being played as a very suboptimal level. It's a suboptimal sport right now. Whereas where it needs to be, where it needs to go, it's so far to go. There is, you try to grow a breed of cricketer or a hitter that would take T20 to that place. That's what you need. Once they get there, and as it is, it's a very asymmetrical relationship between hitting and bowling in T20, right? So if it gets further skewed because of the kind of hitters you're bringing into the sport, then obviously bowling as a skill is insignificant.
Okay, so that was a great discussion. I'd like to thank our guests, Subash and KD, for your insights.
Thanks,
We'd
Max.
love to have you on future episodes as we try to talk more about this, because I know we cannot do justice enough to this topic. Unfortunately, it'll still just be 4 or 5 of us talking about it, because the entire world is thinking about it in a very different way. But soon people will, realize as well. And then, Sid, nice having you as well on the pod. Glad you could make time this afternoon.
Thank you.
We'll be back with more episodes on 81 All Out. Until then, keep listening. As always, you can find us on Spotify, iTunes, a lot of all the popular podcasting services, or just go to 81allout.com. Thanks a lot. See you again next time.